Hi, thank you for joining. My name is Emily Thrasher, and I am the Director of Global Commercial Accounts for Proxyclick Visitor Management. We can't wait to share some information with you and talk to you a little bit about how to connect people with places.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emily. And likewise, I'm extremely excited to be here. Thank you all for joining our session. I'm Harish Perry. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Proxyclick. And like Emily mentioned, we are on a singular mission to connect people to the places they need to be, whether it be visitors to lobbies, employees to workplaces, contractors to work sites, you name it. That is our sole focus. And we're extremely excited to be doing that in 2021 and beyond. But for today, we're here to talk about the future of the workplace. Now, that's an interesting topic because there's a lot of noise being made around that. Lots of thought leaders coming out and saying the future is this, the future is that. But for us as Proxyclick, we wanted to demystify this a little bit. So before we get into the actual content of today, I wanted to share a couple of survey results. So we surveyed more than 300 commercial real estate professionals over Q4 of last year, and this was across multiple countries and all pretty much mid to senior level folks that own anywhere from 500,000 to multiple million square feet of real estate, own and operate it. And we asked them a couple of questions around what they felt about the return to work, how their tenants are feeling, and we learned a couple of interesting things. So the first thing we saw was that at that point, this was towards the end of 2020, 74% of people were saying that their occupancy in their properties was less than 50%, which makes sense. People weren't really going into offices. Visitors were kind of, at a lower point. At the same time, there was positiveness. There was optimism, if you will. They were saying that they anticipate, 34% of them anticipating that their tenants would return to their spaces over the course of this calendar year, and with some sort of vaccines on the horizon, we believe this optimism as well. And from an overall return to work perspective, about half of them felt somewhat prepared. So now, not as optimistic. It would be great if they all said we're ready to go. But towards the end of last year, they were still saying, we're somewhat prepared to offer our tenants, their employees, and our own employees a safe and healthy workplace. And what was interesting was that 85% of the respondents believed this, it makes a lot of sense that technology and unified technology really is going to be the key to return to this return to the workplace. Now, in terms of tech, what we did find was that the technology stack, if you will, that a lot of these commercial real estate leaders are relying on is disparate, right? There's lots of different technologies, but pretty much all of them want to have a unified process in terms of bringing people back. The other thing that was interesting was the rise of flex space, or at least the rise of the anticipated need for flex space. So in the same survey, what we saw was that 82% of respondents said that only 20% or less of their portfolio comprised of flex space, meaning space that can be used by different participants, that can be rented out, that can be used on an on-demand basis. But more than 50% said that they predicted a rise in flex space in 2021. So to back up for a second, right? What we noticed and what we learned from talking to the market was, look, there's optimism. There's predictions that people are going to come back to work, and with the predicted rise in flex space, they're going to come back to a different kind of workplace, not the traditional I go to a desk to do my job kind of thing. So that's all there. But at the same time, we also noticed that there were some concerns hidden in those numbers around what technology are we going to use, right? And so we then went and talked to our own customers, because Proxyclick, we've got thousands of customers across the world with varying real estate portfolios sizes. And what we realized is there's actually a deeper problem. The deeper issue was who actually owns this return to the workplace, right? It's great we can talk about it, we can comment on it and survey it ad nauseum, but who actually owns it? So we did a little bit more research, and what we found is a couple of interesting things where Gartner, one of the leading authorities in terms of thought leadership, and they're in touch with executives from across the world, their viewpoint in some of the surveys they did was that HR actually is going to be a key player in bringing people back to the workplace. So we said, okay, that's Gartner, that makes sense. They're more in touch with those types of executives. We then went and looked at IFMA, which I'm sure a lot of you who are attending today are familiar with. It's the International Facilities Management Association. What they ran a similar survey where they found that HR again came out pretty much on the top of owning this return to the workplace. So we then took it a step further and said, let's actually talk to our customers, right? And when we talked to HR leaders across our customers, we just saw that they had questions. They had more questions than they had any answers. On one hand, there's optimism, there's a need to return to work. People are saying HR needs to handle it. But when we talk to HR, they're just coming up with questions like, how do I create a safe workplace that employees actually want to return to? How do I craft an employee experience? Because employee experience now is way more than just how do I feel at work. It's, do I feel safe at work? Does my work follow me outside? Do I know when I need to go in? All those little details are now part of the experience. How do I then support multiple types of working models? Because it isn't just about I go to a desk, as I said a second ago. It's also about where do I go? Do I even need to go in? Am I going to a room? Am I going to a flex desk? All this is mashed up in the employee experience, and HR has to handle that. So they have more questions right now than there are answers. We also talked to folks on the security side, security and facilities. They too had more questions than they had answers, right? Their questions are around, is everybody that's going to be on site in this new hybrid world of work, are they going to be authorized? Are they compliant? Are they healthy? Do we know it's accurate? And are we doing it the right way across the world? Because we have many customers with global footprints. The other question they had is, how can we stay privacy compliant while still gathering information like temperature scans and asking for vaccination records and asking them to do COVID attestations? Like, how can we stay compliant while doing this? And then, there's a couple of phrases that literally in the last 6 months got introduced into their lexicon. Things like contact tracing, scheduling shifts, capacity planning, temp scanning. These were never part of their life, but now they've been introduced into their lexicon and they're saying, how do I do this, right? I think I'm doing it, but am I doing it correctly? So we just saw that there's more questions, even on the security side. And then finally, we even talked to a lot of CIOs in our network. And what we found is IT has the same questions that they've always had, but now they're being amplified, which is great. HR and security and facilities, you decide that you want to use some new tech, but wait, I have existing technology. I have existing access control. I have existing user provisioning. I have existing technologies for the whole flow for employees. You're telling me you got to throw that out and do something new? Okay, how? And how do I do this without significantly impacting my network capacity, right? So there's that question. And then now IT, we're seeing is more and more in the hot seat where they have to respond overnight to an audit. I mean, for those of you that are following the news, there's likely going to be new mandates or new executive orders to OSHA to enforce safe workplace restrictions and reporting much more than it has been over the last 4 years. So IT is probably looking at this and saying, I need to get ready to my systems to provide audits and regulatory reporting on a dime. So to back up again for a second, right? We want to come back to work. People are excited. There's optimism, but the people that are supposed to be responsible for it, what we see, only have questions. And then when you go to the root of the issue and you look at the people that actually are impacted by this, the employees themselves, the people that need to connect to that workplace, what they too are worried and confused, right? So on the left is some data from the Kaspersky sort of global workplace study from last year. And what they, they interviewed thousands of employees across the world. And what they noticed is people are excited about new ways of working. They do want a world in which they have flexibility to go back 1 or 2 days a week. They don't want to be chained to a desk. They don't want the traditional kind of I commute Monday to Friday. Like this new hybrid world that caters to them is exciting, but they are worried about the workplace. They're worried about infection risks from shared office devices, from simple things like restrooms, elevators, air quality, the physical layout of the office. These simple things are worrying them and are getting in the way of what could be a great new way of working. So we asked ourselves, like, what do we do, right? Like I've kind of laid out, there's this disconnect, if you will, between where the world wants to go and the people that need to help the employees. Like there's a whole disconnect. So what do we do? What we are big fans of is really going back to basics. So what we realize is that there's no right way to solve this, or there's no silver bullet. But what we do need to do is to go back to basics and say, The thing that we need to optimize for is the experience of people, the employees, the visitors, the contractors that are coming on site, the people's flows, if you will, that are going to be coming back or in some new way onto your sites. And so if you focus on the employees for a second, we do need to rethink the employee experience, right? And the same Gartner survey showed that 64% of leaders, HR leaders specifically, are saying that the employee experience is a higher priority for them post, not that we're in a post-COVID world, but in this sort of, okay, COVID is here, what do we do about it world versus before, right? And that's a good thing. So then you ask yourself, what is this new employee experience look like? Is it just about, taking an engagement survey and feeling happy at work? What we're actually proposing is something more like an employee experience 2.0. You could argue, well, we're at 3.0, 4.0, whatever 0.0, a new kind of employee experience that has a couple of guiding principles. The first being that it's comprehensive, meaning it covers all touch points from the time an employee wakes up till the time they go into work, till the time they leave and go back. It covers the entire flow of that employee. Speaking of flow, it needs to work in the flow of how employees think. Because if you force them to do something on their laptop, on their desktop, at home, and they do something clunky at work, like that's not going to work. You actually risk alienating your employees. When we say in the flow, it actually needs to work with this, with the where employees and people live most of their life. It needs to be reassuring, meaning it has to protect privacy. It has to create psychological safety, because look, we're going to be asking employees for data like temperature scans, vaccination records, potential health data, which is something companies never asked, but it introduces a whole new privacy risk. And the companies that will win are the ones that reassure employees that, listen, we're not going to do anything bad with this data. It's just for a moment in time. And also, safety includes psychological safety, right? You're not going to be penalized for adopting a hybrid schedule. So it needs to be reassuring. And then finally, it has to be extensible, right? A couple of the things that I mentioned earlier, like temperature scanning and shifts and contact tracing, those are the technologies that will probably be pervasive for the next, I would say, the next year. What comes after that? There is probably going to be an EX 3.0 after that. So whatever technologies are put in place need to be extensible and connect back with what that employee wants. So what does that actually look like? So this is an interesting. This is actually Proxyclick on Proxyclick. So we use our technology within our company, and what we're doing and what we see a lot of forward-thinking companies, small, big, across the world, single location, multi-location, multi-tenant, whatever it is, there's multiple examples of people doing this where they're adopting more of a sort of comprehensive, reassuring, in the flow approach to employee experience. So what does that mean, right? The days of an employee, let's say his name is Henry for the purpose of this presentation, right? The days of an employee like Henry saying, oh yeah, I got to get up and I got to take the train, then I got to go, walk over to my desk, those are done. In the new world of work, in an EX 2.0 world, Henry's going to decide, oh yeah, you know what, I want to go in on Thursday, right? This is a example from November, but it could be I want to go in on the 1st of Feb. And let me check who from my team is actually going to be in that office that day. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily need to be just an office. It could also be a co-working space or a flex space, right? Because work is no longer him being tied to a desk. Work is him going to a workplace where he can either do focused work or connect with his team. That connection is very important. So that's the first piece, is scheduling the visit. The second thing is the system letting him know that, yep, you're good to go, because why? Behind the scenes, we've checked that there's enough capacity there. You're not going to exceed occupancy limits. And if he wants to, he can book a room, book a desk, or book a space, right? And to break out a character for a second, for those of you that are saying, oh, this is a luxury that tech companies have, we're seeing manufacturing companies, logistics companies, anyone that has people that need to get to a workplace are starting to adopt this model. So that's sort of step 2 in this experience, is let me make sure I know where I'm going and that it's safe to go in. The third piece is pre-screening, because it isn't just my team's going to be there, the office is good, I need to be safe as well. And so whatever the new questions are, it used to be, have you come in contact with anybody? Have you traveled to a location that is, has known spikes? A new question could be, are your vaccination records up to date, right? And is there a safe way that we can check it? All that is part of this pre-screening. But what we're advocating is it's all in the flow of how he works. He doesn't have to go to some clunky machine somewhere and let it know. It comes to him, right? The fourth thing is when he gets to work, he can check in a touchless fashion that's integrated with his access control. So again, it's all kind of in the flow of how he's working. The next thing is temperature scanning. I mean, that's going to be important for a while. Having that just be part of how he gets into work, having that be privacy compliant and having that be seamless is also a core part of the experience. And finally, once he's there, he interacts with his colleagues, it's all safe and distant and done in the right way. Having him be checked out automatically is important too, because then as a leader, as a facilities leader, as a security leader, you know who's there and who's not. And as an HR leader, you can start to see things like which groups of people are coalescing the most, because that's actually the real org chart of my company. So there's benefits in this beyond just for the employee. And also this extends beyond employees, right? Because the other actors in a space like visitors, contractors, vendors, they need things like dynamic flows for contractors and vendors, touchless check-ins for everybody, remote registration, to make sure that if all the people flows are handled well, employees feel safe. So, we talked about kind of where the world is. We talked about what the world needs to look like. But Emily, I'm going to pass it over to you in a second. But we still have a problem right now, which is today's technology is not really set up to handle this EX 2.0 kind of future state that we want to get to. So Em, if you want to jump in on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see this every day. I mean, currently most offices that are sitting even in the same area code aren't really handling systems on the same systematic level. With the buying and selling of buildings, few are completely aligned on their technology stack. We've been working with a lot of multi-tenant commercial buildings that, they bring a building in and they're on a completely different technology stack. And it's very hard to manage for the technology team, for the HR team, anyone that's trying to manage on that level with the tech stack. So we do understand that today's technology isn't set up to handle 2.0. But what we've heard from the market, excuse me, and we are now going to be seeing yet another complexity added in what Harish had mentioned, is bringing in a co-working or flex space that is potentially managed by another building owner with all of their own systems. And this brings yet another complexity to the existing tech setup, as we mentioned. So we understand that your different offices sitting in the same city or on a different continent all have different ways of working. And from local government standards to compliance within your own operations, the flexibility to accommodate each flow is critical in the success of your future tech state, but it's also very critical for the happiness of your employees and bringing them back to whichever office they need to sit in. And as we continue to mention the flex space, we continue to see businesses come back to us and say, hey, we're going to actually add floor 15 through 20 is going to be multiple companies coming back, and they may have employees coming and going. How do we manage that from a lobby level? And how do we give them that experience so that they feel comfortable and safe coming in? Mm-hmm. And, we keep seeing and we keep thinking about it. And I was in the tech world before on the IT side. So, imagine a server room with all the cords messed up in place. And then think about this. What is the future state? What is holding together all of these different flows that your company needs to position themselves for a successful future, right? That's what we all want. So let's take a look here at some of the things that your company may already have thought about, but perhaps aren't managed in a cohesive way. So at the top, we have analytics, data. We all love the data. We want to see exports in as many Excel files as possible, right? Mm-hmm. No, that's actually not what we're hearing in today. We're being requested over and over about receiving organized data in a way that allows you to draw insights and make informed decisions. That makes sense. That makes sense from any business standard. Mm-hmm. And then next up is making sure folks entering the building are healthy. And Harish, you nailed it when you were talking through the actual flow and practice.
Right.
We have to receive the proper authorizations now. And this logically makes sense even pre-COVID, right? With the seriousness of contact tracing and ensuring we can notify someone quickly if they've been exposed, you will want something easy to use and customizable based on the operations. And we all know that these operations are now being done by security or HR or IT or a combination of them. And we need to make sure that the skill set of these people, we can allow for any skill set. So lastly, orchestrating all these things into something that your team can manage from afar. Although we hope everyone gets back to the office, I know I would love to go back to an office right now. It may not be where we normally sit. So I may not be rejoining my office in New York very quickly. I may have to rejoin an office more locally to me. So although I cannot guarantee that all those cords in your server closet magically untangle themselves, the way that you think about and approach all these complex people workflows within your organization, they can be magically organized with following a few best practices. So let's talk about very simplistically the 4 things that we think will help manage any type of project, but mainly returning to work, getting people back into space. We want to get the right people in the room. We ask at the very beginning, who owns the return to workplace initiative? Is it HR? Is it IT? Is it security? Is it all 3 of them? Just make sure you get the right people in and agree on your North Star. Is the North Star reducing your footprint? Is it making your employees want to come back to the office? Is it a combination of those things? So get the right people in the room, decide on your goals, and this will allow you to gain more ground on your return to work strategy. The third thing, I always come back to data. I've been in data for so long, is if your return to work strategy includes technology, which it will probably in some point, whether it's expanding your tech platform that you see it sit today, or whether you already have something in place and you're going to expand on it, map it out. Build a plan for what data you need, where it's coming from, and how it is being used. It's going to make a world of difference in ensuring you are moving forward towards your North Star. And lastly, just keep it simple. We all want to do things right the first time. However, the world is going to continue to change. We've seen it change in 2020. No one expected it in 2019. Keep your operations as simple as possible. Keep everyone in communication to get things up and running, and then make changes down the road if needed. You'll be more agile. You'll be able to meet the challenges of the environment, and hopefully continue making your employees as happy as possible. Thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today, albeit over in our distributed world. But thank you again. And with that, we're out.